Excuse me. Can I quit this podcast?
I told Eddie Murphy to stay in college so he'd have something to fall back on. I did great advice. Jackie, how about the lighter side of history? The lighter side.
I'm not done laughing at my joke.
Okay. I know a lot of things and I share them on the podcast and you don't care.
What are we talking about?
I can't get a word in edgewise on this show. I mean, it's...
Here's how we sell it.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in. I am Jackie Martling, and you are?
Peter Bales.
And this is Stand Up Memories, which is?
The perfect name for a podcast that is two stand-ups reliving memories about comedy and everything under the sun.
Yes, and we're going to be discussing presidents today.
Oh.
And we have a specific reason, right?
Right, because this is true. You're not going to believe it, but Jackie is actually related to a president.
We don't know that.
Well, I thought it's pretty much established.
But I have news.
You do?
The rumor in my family forever has been that Theodore Roosevelt's father sired my great-grandfather. And as of this afternoon, we have a Roosevelt in Texas that is willing to give us DNA, who is the direct Y chromosome from Theodore Roosevelt's father's brother. And so we're going to have a Y chromosome from one side and a Y chromosome. We're going to know definitively within the next few weeks whether or not the rumor that Theodore Roosevelt is my great-grandfather's illegitimate half-brother is true or not, which is really exciting and really fun. And the more evidence that comes out, that, you know, circumstantial evidence about their relationship just makes it so believable. But that's fun. So we thought we'd talk today, and I was going through the different silly things that I know about presidents, because of course when I was a kid, all I knew was jokes. And one of the first jokes I remember hearing was Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address while traveling to Washington on the back of an envelope. Which is just so silly. So silly. And also, George Washington was first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen, but he married a widow. So he wasn't always first.
Martha Washington, a wonderful marriage without children. And George Washington and Lincoln, I'm sure people all agree, are our two greatest presidents. And you are, I predict, we'll update this in a future podcast, that Jackie Martling is related to the illustrious Teddy Roosevelt. And it's not surprising, there's a scandal involved, very scandalous for that time.
I already have a place picked out on Mount Rushmore for myself. And it's very exciting. But just recently, in the last couple of weeks, we got a copy of a newspaper article from Washington when Theodore Roosevelt came back to Oyster Bay for the first time since becoming president in 1901, and he returned in 1902, and it references his pal Frank Hall, who worked side by side with him at the White House and also side by side with him in Sagamore Hill, and Frank's daughter, Dorothy Hall, who's my grandmother.
I love it. I love it.
It's just fun. It doesn't mean anything. People are like, what? And my girlfriend Barbara said, "What are you going to do if you find out it's not true?" I said, "Well, we're gonna know once and for all." It's like, you know, it's something we've been chasing for a long time. Real quickly, the rumor, I didn't find out about this rumor until everybody that could have helped me find out was dead. I found out about it from my 93-year-old aunt, and so there was nowhere to go. So we've been poking here and poking there, and so we're searching around and searching around.
Well, as a historian, I'm not comfortable talking about people who are alive. I love when they're dead. Teddy Roosevelt I like the guy. I think he was a great president. He was a progressive Republican back in the day when the Republicans could be progressive. And he is maybe the most famous Long Islander ever to live. Jackie and I are proud Long Islanders, and this show comes to you from Long Island. And
I'm from Oyster Bay, where every place you turn is Roosevelt, Roosevelt, Roosevelt Park,
Good.
Roosevelt Field, Roosevelt this, Roosevelt that. And I am so sure if he were alive today, he would hate me. He would have been the first guy to take a machine gun and mow down the hippies in the late 60s.
I don't know, but I think he would have loved your jokes. I'll tell you that. I think he would have loved your jokes. He was an incredible personality. He had to be the center of attention. They used to say that when he went to a wedding, his biggest desire was to eclipse the bride.
Now, see, I don't know any of this. I love you.
Oh,
I don't
what
love
a
it.
personality. I mean, I just, and he loved giving speeches. They have recordings of him, a high-pitched voice, very interesting sound. Sagamore Hill, that Jackie mentioned, is in Oyster Bay. That was his famous home. Here's a great story for you. Teddy is giving a speech from his Victorian porch at Sagamore Hill. Loved talking to the crowd. And he's firing away, and he gets a heckler who'd had a bit to drink, who interrupts the president and says, "My grandfather was a Democrat, my father was a Democrat, and I'm a Democrat." And Teddy goes, "Well, if your grandfather was a jackass and your father was a jackass, what would that make you?" And the guy goes, "A Republican."
Oh,
That's a classic story.
that is a classic story.
I love it. And you're related. That's a funny man.
I don't like when he gets beaten, but that's fun. And for argument's sake, if you visit Sagamore Hill, you can actually go on that porch and
Yes.
sit in the rocking chairs up there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's a National Historic Site that was made into a National Historic Site by my great uncle Len
Wow.
and Roosevelt's daughter Ethel Roosevelt Derby.
Wow. See the connections here?
Well, theoretically, Teddy was Uncle Len's uncle.
Well, that's...
You know what I mean?
And I'm jealous of that because my most famous ancestor was a female impersonator in New Orleans in the 1890s. I mean, this lineage you have...
That's what, when I first saw your wardrobe, I was suspicious.
You know what? Teddy was extremely nearsighted. He's fascinating. Napoleonic complex, relatively short, 5'7", 5'8", worked out to compensate for that. He was a sickly child with asthma, but super smart, got super strong, worked out with a medicine ball. Anybody out there remember the medicine ball? You used to throw that
that's
back and
before
forth.
our time.
Right. Made himself very macho, very strong, hunter. And
he was such an egomaniac. You know
Well,
the
you can
stories
say
about
that.
him shooting the rhino. There's like 12 natives, all with rifles, and Teddy, and they all shot the rhino.
at the same time,
Right, and they said his glasses were this thick. It's a miracle he
In
didn't
fact-
shoot one of the natives.
right? Well, they knew this guy's paying their bill, and they don't want him to be killed by they're very nearsighted.
Good shot, Sahib.
Of course, 12 people fired at the moment that he fired. They got the rhino.
They got the rhino.
And the conservative Republicans and Democrats in America at the time are toasting health to the rhinos. Good luck to the rhinos because Teddy had enemies, but he was worried about his nearsightedness, not that there's anything wrong with that, and would have 3 pairs of glasses on his person at all times. And
Is that true?
that is true. And he is rumored to have inspired the cartoon character that most older people know about, Mr. Magoo. Mr. Magoo.
Now,
but
you asked me about Magoo before.
yeah, I looked it up. It's not true. It's not true. It's a rumor. It's one of those things. It's
But
not true.
if you're nearsighted,
It makes sense. But I got to tell you, interestingly enough, you know who inspired Mr. Magoo? Well, the nearsighted, gets into trouble all the time cartoon character that boomers remember from their youth. W.C. Fields inspired Mr. Magoo. Extremely interesting. But Teddy did inspire the teddy bear. That's absolutely true.
That's true.
Bigger than life. You know, the Rough
I
Riders.
can't believe the guy died at like 61. He did so much. He packed so much into those 61
I know,
years.
it was I think it was 65 around there, heart ailment.
No, 61.
61, he died
He
at
was
60,
born
are you
in
sure?
58, and he died in 1919 in his sleep at Sagamore Hill.
As he was getting ready to run again for president in 1920. But he died. I think he would have won in 1920. And how different our history would have been.
And of course, my great-grandfather would have been vice president had he not died in 1916.
Can you imagine a president setting up a boxing ring on the lawn of the White House so he can go out and box during the day to get his exercise? And people wanted meetings with him. And for example, the Secretary of the Treasury would say, I need to talk to the president. And they would say, well, you know, you got to book a few rounds. You want to talk to the president, you got to go and box a few rounds with the president. And in between rounds, maybe you can talk to him about the budget. This is the kind of a presidency this was. Do you know that Teddy took a shot to the eye when he was boxing, and he went blind for 3 months? And he said, don't anybody tell my wife, I'll get in trouble. And nobody knows why, but it cleared up. He got his eyesight back in the one eye.
That is so crazy.
But this is a huge family. Get that horse out of the White House. You know, that it was an insane time.
He could be despicable too, because there's a famous story of him riding on the horse from Sagamore Hill to Oyster Bay, and a dog come and run out and biting at the horse's heels. And the next day, when he's riding into Oyster Bay, the dog came running out, and Roosevelt blew his head off with a gun. And that's a true story. And it's like, you know, you don't want to hear that stuff.
How are the teachers in elementary school missing that story?
It's amazing.
I don't have
share
any
that.
idea.
Now, I'm sure that we are nearing the end of this episode, and I'm going to make a complete U-turn craziness here, because you said if you want to talk to the president, you have to go out and box a few rounds. So I watched this movie the other night, Clark Gable movie, Mogambo, and to get the natives to take him on this gorilla hunt, he had to do this thing, they had a name for it, and he stood there against a wall, and the natives ran up, and about 8 or 10 different natives threw spears at him, like in a sideshow. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And I mean, it was frightening. But what was most frightening is they're going to catch a leopard in a net. You know, they have a net set to catch leopards or gorillas, whatever. And as they're lowering the net, they're going, wabe, wabe, come in, somebody, I'm like, that's Murray the K's chant from 10-10 Wins. You remember Murray Kaufman and the submarine
Murray the
race
K, 10-10 Wins, which was a rock station then, and that's his chant.
That was his chant, and I'm watching Murray K's chant on Mogambo with Clark Gable. I mean, to lift that and put it so out of, I mean, that's beyond brilliant. I mean, it was exactly, whoa, babe, I've been laughing at that for a week.
Did they do that on purpose? Did the movie do that on purpose?
Do what?
Put that chant in there.
No, that movie was made in like 1953. Murray was 10 years later.
Well, then it's a coincidence. I'm a little
If
slow.
if you hear them, there's no way. He definitely saw that and thought that might be very, very funny.
And he took that and he put it into his radio show. Wow.
Which is just such a non sequitur.
It is a non sequitur, but
I didn't turn on my iPhone and record it off the movie, which I probably should have, because it's just not believable. I don't mean it was close. I mean it was exact, which is just so fun.
I love it. I love it. Only you would notice that. Murray the K?
One more story about Murray the K. He was supposed to go out to dinner, him and his wife, with somebody, and he couldn't go because him and another guy that they were going to dinner, and he was supposed to be writing a song for Bobby Darin. and they were late. I don't know if this is true, but it's a great one. And they're sitting at the piano, and his wife comes over and says, all right, come on. Well, no, we got to write a song. Yeah, splish splash, I was taking a bath. How's that sound? Come on. And they went to dinner, and that was a monstrous hit. Even if that's not true, that's a very funny song. You know, hey, how's this? Splish splash, I was taking. Because the first time you hear that song, you're like, what kind of song is that? Bobby Darin was a huge singer in the late 50s, early 60s, and he tried to make the transition into Hippieville,
rock and roll and Hippieville, and that didn't work. And when we went back to his roots, everybody loved him again because he was incredible, Bobby Darin.
He was a great entertainer.
You know, but you mentioned 1010 Winds Radio. Remember the days of AM radio? There was no FM yet. The Beatles came to New York, and WABC, which was the #1 rock station back then, was covering the Beatles coming to the airport, coming to the Plaza Hotel, the huge crowds playing Beatles music, and getting, Jackie, are you ready, a 75% share. That is unheard of in the 70. That's unheard of for any radio program ever.
And Murray the K finagled his way into their hotel room and broadcast it on 1010, which was absolutely unheard of. It was, you know, I think we're probably rolling to a close. In a future episode, we will have a very, very interesting story about Bobby Darin and a couple other celebrities that are connected by a very, very weird happenstance. And do you know what I'm talking about yet?
I don't. I want to hear this.
Come back and see us again, won't you? This is Stand Up Memories with
Peter Bales
and Jackie Martin.
Hey, a new episode of Stand Up Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
It's starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace?
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah.